Hello there, Noemi Szeri here, and today I'm going to talk to you about ACH or Advanced Conversational Hypnotherapy and the course that is coming up on the 15th, 16th, and 17th of August this year, 2025. Okay, so what is ACH? It is best conceptualized as a minimalist therapeutic system. We will look at it in a minute, but just so that you get an overview of things that I'm going to talk to you about, as well as what both my course as well as being part of the community will actually incorporate, which is therapy as well as entrepreneurship. So we'll be talking about what it means to become an entrepreneur, both the mindset and the practical aspects of it, because often we end up learning a new therapeutic model or a system or a a form of therapy, and we are really excited, but we don't actually know how to get clients, how to practice, or we don't have a way of thinking like an entrepreneur. And that is something that is going to be included either in the course or then in the master classes that follows when you are part of the community. So, why is it a minimalist therapeutic system, or what is the reason behind conceptualizing it as such? So ACH goes back to the essence. So if you're watching this, the chances are you are already a therapist, probably a hypnotherapist or a coach or somebody who's already practicing or at least has learned another modality. So you're not entirely new to this. This course is actually not catering for entirely novices, but people who want to create more, people who have already gained a lot of experience or gained knowledge, but they don't know how to practice it or want to actually level up. And this is going back to the essences, going back to what matters when your client is sitting in front of you. And one of the way of doing it is basically working with principles rather than techniques. So you will see how we bring in flexibility through looking at principles that exist in ACH rather than trying to use rigid techniques that will either work or not work with your clients, because at the end of the day, everybody is different. There are individual differences that need to be taken into account. And when you apply a principle, then you have the flexibility to adapt to the needs of each and every client. Whereas when you're applying rigid techniques, then you might not. So if we think about hypnotherapy, regression doesn't work with everybody. And then you might ask yourself, what do I do now? Or in coaching, certain questions don't work with everybody. And you might just be going round and round the symptom rather than getting to where you need to be to actually help create the transformation. And of course, we will be looking at humanistic focus, humanistic approach. Now, if you look around, most things today actually apply the humanistic principles. After all, we're talking about 50s and 60s psychology when this all started. So it's not a new thing. However, what I see in therapy is that whilst we say that everybody is different and that the answers lie within the reach of the client and it's in their own mind, in their own um, way of doing it, when we are actually applying techniques rather than principles, and when we are strictly uh, applying certain rigid things to get somewhere, then you will see that it's not actually as humanistic as it could be or even should be in certain cases. And of course, we are transformation driven. So you will be always thinking about how is it that I am getting them to the transformation rather than how I could sell them more programs or or techniques that I have just learned. Uh, Now, this is the opposite of what I have seen in many cases and in many modalities, which is where you have complexity and this idea of learning more and more skills and learn and filling up your toolbox, which is not a bad thing in theory. And in fact, you will not have to forget everything, or you will not have to stop learning, because it is both a human necessity to always grow and expand, and that is actually a wonderful thing. But sometimes what we are creating is chaos, and then we don't actually know anything. We don't actually become experts at anything, or are not able to create the transformations with the speed that we want, or with the elegance that we want, because there are just so many choices that they just don't actually fit in. And then, of course, there are techniques. Whilst I'm not entirely against techniques, because let's face it, they are good, but if you are only limited to techniques, then things can either take longer, which means that you have session after session after session, and that can be incredibly discouraging, because you will feel like a failure, and you might be less likely to actually talk about your services, or to do the marketing, do the sales with confidence and with the sort of commitment that you need in order for people to want to buy from you. And of course, we are often symptom focused. Yeah, so if somebody comes to you with, let's say, anxiety, what you will see in ACH is that we go beyond the symptom. We want to see what it is beyond it, what it is underneath it all, rather than focus on the symptom, because we can actually sometimes solve the symptom, but then the problem comes out again differently, or it just comes back after a while. And of course, we are not program driven. What you want to actually start uh, thinking like, or your approach will be, how can I actually get that transformation faster, so that my clients are not in pain, so that I reduce that time they have to wait, or they have to go through what they are going through. So if we look at the ACH timeline, then you will see that we have the hypnotic questioning, basically a conversation. So we will be learning about how to have an everyday conversation. So we will cut down on time wasters such as induction and deepness. Um, it's not relevant and it's not necessary. This is another way of basically coming back to the essence, a connection with your client. And but what actually creates what is different between ACH and other modalities such as coaching is that you are focusing on unconscious moments and you're working with it. So instead of putting your client into trance, you will be looking at trance-like moments, which is a lot more powerful, as you will see. And also, you'll be focusing on what they are saying, how they are saying it, what thinking errors there are, what conclusions have they made, as well as the body-based, the somatic, the emotional dysregulation that goes with some of these beliefs and thinking. So that, but you will not be solving anything. You will not be using questions to solve anything. Instead, when you are asking the questions, your clients will get insights and resources by thinking, uh, by really reflecting on it in those unconscious moments, or in the depth of the unconscious moments. And of course, at the end, we will also introduce testing. A lot of the times, testing is just not part of it. So you go, there's an intervention, and then your client goes home, and everybody hopes that it'll be all right. It has been resolved because the core issue has been dealt with. But if you don't test it, then you can't be sure, because a lot of problems are not usually just one thing. So there are lots of little things that are interconnected. So when you test something, and we'll look at different ways of testing these results, then you will be able to uncover new problems, new thinking errors, new conclusions, and that will lead you back to starting again with the hypnotic questioning, with looking at the unconscious moments. It's as if you were giving mini session within mini session in the same session. Therefore, at the end of your session, you will have worked through several issues, all of them connected. And that's when you can see that, yes, my client now has has been given the transformation that they were looking for. And of course, we'll also look at things like demarcation and how you integrate things, because therapy has to be integrated into everyday life. You don't want it to stay in the context of the therapy room. And also, it doesn't actually end when we're talking and working at the subconscious level and working with the subconscious. Then you will see and you will already know that that actually continues. But you have to communicate that to your clients so that they don't actually feel that something is wrong when some of the symptoms come up as the transformation continues before actually things settle down and that new way of being materializes. Now, going to the entrepreneurship part, one thing that I will be emphasizing again and again is to have this single session and result mentality mindset, which doesn't mean that once you have done this course, you will only have single sessions. You might actually, or it might take you a while to get there. But the important thing is not to lock yourself in conclusions and idea that this has to go on forever, or this has to go on for 3 months, or you have to give away 6 sessions. Because a lot of times when we expect something, we somehow manage to actually create it. Whereas when you already start with a mindset that actually this can be done differently, actually, I can be aiming for something else, then you give yourself the opportunity. And we'll talk about how this can actually be negative as well. What happens if you try to speed things up, which will actually slow you down, and why that happens. But the important thing is when we think about the mindset of it, is that your clients buy results. They buy the transformation. They want the pain gone rather than they want an experience, they want programs. They want actually that choice that therapy gives you and gives them. And of course, we'll also go into things like how niching down and working with a specific problem can help you make this happen. Because obviously, if you were selling life transformation, that would actually go on forever. Because what does it mean? It's not something tangible. So your value proposition or proposition, sorry, your value proposition is results. Yeah, so the breakthroughs. And this is why, as I said at the beginning, that we go back to the essence. What really matters them is for that pain, for that emotional anguish to be gone, so that they have choices, so that they don't feel that they are blocked, that they have to live with anxiety, that they have to binge eat, that they have to go from one crappy relationship to the next one, that they feel that they are empowered. And it's not an external empowerment, it's not talking to you, it's actually that they find it in themselves. And then they can actually live their lives differently because they are making different choices and creating different habits and routines. So we'll take out all the time wasters like session preparation. If we are talking and working with um, symptoms, so basically we are working with core issues, but if the client comes in with a symptom, then you cannot prepare because you don't know what is behind the symptoms. So you won't be writing scripts. You won't want to create rapport. You don't need suggestibility tasks or deepeners, or you don't need to give your clients homework, and will actually touch upon things like how homework can be a negative thing when it comes to such work and when it comes to the transformation that is going on, and how all these will reduce the need for multiple sessions, because that can also be a time waster for everyone. And of course, we'll always come back to an identity that I already mentioned, that you're both a therapist and an entrepreneur. So we'll be building these things together. And as a therapist, you're client oriented. Yeah, so we talked about this humanistic approach, that it is you are there for the client. And when you are actually entirely present for the client, you're practicing active listening. You are actually entirely focusing on them rather than the script you have written, the previous client you talked to and might have had something similar, or thinking about your own insecurities. Yeah, so that's not client oriented. You want to be entirely present. And for that, you also want to have a regulated nervous system. So we'll talk about that as well, how to have that, how to ensure that you have a regulated nervous system as a therapist, what it is to be working with principles rather than relying on techniques, and how to have strong boundaries. That's also really important, because I see that a lot of people who end up in therapy and coaching don't want to really help, but there's a difference between helping and sacrificing your own well-being, and really not having those boundaries, because it can lead to burnout, and it can lead to you really hating this profession. And most important, I think that you want to care about your clients. You want to create that connection with your clients, but you don't want to care about the symptom. One very important thing is that if you start caring about the problem that your client comes in, you will put yourself into a position where you're unable to help, because you you can get sucked into the problem just the way your client gets sucked into it, and then you are in the weeds of it. You can't see the bigger picture, and you can't have that two steps between them and you, and therefore back to insecurities, back to multiple sessions, back to a lot of things that you could easily eliminate by using this simple principle that you are not there to care about the symptoms. Yes, you're there to care about the client, and you will care about the client by knowing that the problem that they're bringing to the table is a symptom, the core issue is behind it, and that they have the capacity to actually solve it. And as an entrepreneur, whereas as a therapist, you're client oriented, as an entrepreneur, you are solution oriented. You want to see solutions everywhere, because you will be responsible for all the departments, right? The sales department, the marketing department, probably the accountant, at least at the beginning. Then you will be creating content, you will be creating videos. So there are many things that you have to do, and you want to have a system that helps you do it as easily as possible. And you want to create something that is just as minimalist, just as elegant to the essence. And so will be talking about possibilities for you, as well as how a regulated nervous system is just as important for you as an entrepreneur as it is as a therapist. So, how to build that capacity, how to build the capacity to actually be resilient, uh, for instance, in your body, and of course, with practice as well with other therapists, and how to stay robust. And here I want to say that as soon as you start creating content, you will see that all of a sudden people will interact with it, or maybe they won't interact. So what is important? What is it that you want to actually focus on? What metrics you want to be keeping an eye on, how to audit things. And and of course, you have to be robust because you might actually get hatred as well. It's quite a normal thing. Not everybody will like you, and some people will really not like you, and they will shower you with their opinions sometimes. And this is why you have to be robust and how to actually store that, how to create that, how to have that mindset, and how to have the financial and business acumen, and how to start thinking strategically, planning, execution. Now, as I said, the 3 days are about building the skills as a therapist. The entrepreneurship comes afterwards. We will be talking about that in masterclasses and in the community. So, as the training, you will get a 3 day virtual live training and a recording of it. And as I said, it's August 15, 16, 17. It's going to be about 5 hours a day, each day. And there are also some bonuses, a private community, mentoring in the community, and you will be able to access all future ACH trainings and short masterclasses that I will be putting together without paying for them. And thank you for listening.